Never speak about compensation during a first interview. It's not about tangible aspects. It's not about money. It's about actually the role, personal chemistry, right? I mean, many other factors rather than compensation. And second, never mention work-life balance.
Hey everyone, it's Shulin. Before kicking off, I'd really appreciate it if you could show After the Bar some love by giving it a 5-star rating and hitting that follow button on Spotify. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, do subscribe to us and hit that thumbs up button. Welcome to After the Bar. So this is a podcast where I speak with lawyers, past, present, and future. For this season, we're talking about change, navigating career pivots and transition. And today it's a very, very special episode because I've invited my colleague. And she's actually a lawyer who transited from Europe to be a legal recruiter in Singapore. And today it's extra special because we're going to share some insider tips on how to ace your job interview, how to negotiate salary, and how to get that dream job. So without further ado, welcome Tessa!
Thank you, Shirling. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much. And today the listeners are not getting just one, but two lawyers who are turned recruiters. So can you tell everyone a little bit more about yourself?
But maybe you can start speaking about Asland Legal, because I don't think I have heard Asland Legal before on After the Bar.
Okay, that's true. When I first started the podcast, I wanted it to be very separate from the company. So yes, Asland Legal is the name of the company we both work in. It was started 8 years ago by me. And we specialize in helping lawyers chart their careers and expand their legal teams. But this episode is about you, not about me. So Tessa, tell everyone a little bit more about what you do.
So on a daily basis, I do advise lawyers on their long-term careers. And I do help them to unpack their goals, their targets, their intended achievements. And with that, we work also on what's your wish list? What are your drivers? What are your motivations in order to, find that right long-term home for all of them?
So Tessa, you were in Clifford Chance for over 6 years as a real estate lawyer. And then you moved to Singapore to be a legal recruiter 10 years ago. So now with all that experience and wisdom that you have gained as a legal recruiter, what is one thing you wish you knew as a young lawyer?
If someone would have told me, if you want to pursue an international career, you should be an international arbitration lawyer, not a real estate lawyer.
So can you tell us a little bit more? What does that mean?
So at the end of the day, and I get that a lot from lawyers who are in Europe and want to really build up an international legal career, is what can I do actually to really become an international lawyer? My advice is always then be a dispute resolution lawyer, specialize in international arbitration, but don't go through a real estate route, for example. But no one told me that.
Ah, I see. Tessa, the two of us dispense career advice every day for so many years now. I'm curious, what's the best career advice you've ever received?
So 15 years ago, a partner told me, Tessa, partnership can never be a milestone per se. It's about the journey. Otherwise, once you reach partnership, what's next, right? It was my partner who was my career advisor back in practice, right? I mean, but I was a full PQE lawyer when he told me that, but it still is in my mind, actually. Even in recruitment, you can't have a specific milestone being that end goal. It's about enjoying the journey towards it.
So I'm curious, was it very difficult to resign, given that it sounds like you have a very close relationship with your mentor?
It was very difficult to think, okay, I don't want to stay in practice in the long run. I want to look for an alternative career path. Very difficult to convince my parents as well. But at the end of the day, I always use the analogy of Alice in Wonderland. So Alice is big and then she becomes small to become bigger again.
Wow. How did you convince your parents? I'm so curious.
So I told them that I was taking a sabbatical from practice. And eventually, if I would want to go back, I could.
And was that really what you thought? Was that really, you were thinking this is just a temporary experiment, sabbatical? You could go back.
No, definitely not.
Oh, maybe Tessa's parents are listening to this.
And it's quite funny actually, because with all the lawyers that I partner with, we always look at the different scenarios, what would be the worst case scenario. For my own journey, I was never looking back. I always was looking towards the future. And I have never looked back since then, 10 years ago.
And maybe that's the difference. Because for me, when I left law, I also thought it was an experiment. I told myself I would give myself 1 or 2 years. And I did almost go back. So our journey is slightly different. But yeah, look at where we are now.
Yeah, the approach was very different.
Completely different. So now that we've heard some good career advice, what's some really bad recommendations you've heard?
So I have heard about accepting a counteroffer, for example. It has been proven that 95% of the individuals that accept a counteroffer would leave within the next 12 months. So never accept a counteroffer, and also never accept an offer just because of compensation.
Wow, that's very powerful. And you know what? I've heard advice given by a lot of people that use an offer from another company or competitor and use that to negotiate for a higher salary. I think that's terrible advice because we've been on both sides, right? We were both candidates and we're now recruiters, and we've seen how that can really backfire. As companies can try and keep you for the short run, but they're really looking for, they really know you're a flight risk and they're looking for a backup plan.
It's not going to work out well in the long term. And that's really the approach that we have into legal recruitment, is it needs to be the right opportunity in the long run.
Yeah. But what is the advice you give to someone who genuinely wants to leave the company and has been presented with an irresistible counteroffer? Like, so if I was given a 30% uplift to join a competitor, but my company is giving me something ridiculous, 80% uplift, it might be very difficult to say no.
But you know that actually all of us, after 8 weeks with our new salary in our bank account, our bonus in our bank account, we're not motivated because of our bank account. We feel entitled to that. So that means that we're not going to the office, we're not going to work because of our compensation.
That's true.
So it's not going to work out in the long run.
That's true. And some of the factors that prompted me to job search in the first place will still be there and might even get worse. Yeah, that's true. You can't put a price tag on that.
No, and there's a moment that you're also breaking, trust has been broken, basically.
Yes, that's right. Okay, let's talk about common mistakes people make in job interviews. What do you see, Tessa?
So first of all, never speak about compensation during a first interview. It's not about tangible aspects. It's not about money. It's about actually the role, personal chemistry, right? I mean, many other factors rather than compensation. And second, never mention work-life balance. It's the most misrepresented terms in job interviews.
Yes, because work-life balance can mean very different things to different people. So going back to mentioning compensation in a first round job interview, but what do I do if I go for the job interview and the person interviewing me is already asking me for my salary expectations and they want to make me a job offer on the spot? What do I do?
So we always recommend candidates to do not commit to any compensation during a first meeting. It's not the time to do that. Of course, we're here to help, right? I mean, and to support them on the journey, step by step, but never commit to a compensation during that first meeting.
Yes.
There will be a further opportunity for that.
Yes, absolutely. And I would want to add that if you're working with a recruiter, great. Just say, oh, I guess maybe we can continue salary discussions through my recruiter. That's one option. The other option is just stick to the facts. Well, that was my last base salary. That was my last drawn bonus. And for my salary expectations, can I have a think about it before getting back to you? Because the problem is during an interview, you might end up lowballing yourself, or you might end up asking for too much and then you seem really greedy. So that's our hot tip. Don't mention, don't do a salary negotiation during a job interview. So on the topic of salary negotiation, we always get asked, Tessa, what is the usual pay increment I should ask for when I move from one company to another?
So it's not set in stone. It really, really depends. And that's why I can't give you an exact answer. It could be a 5 to 10%. It could be even more than that. It could be a pay cut as well, right? I mean, not all the lateral moves are driven, again, by compensation. And therefore, not in all the cases we see a pay increase.
Yes. And when it comes to salary negotiation, there's also a different thought process when you're trying to negotiate for yourself and what you want to stay in the same company. Can you talk us through that?
So in those cases, we would advise lawyers in presenting, again, like a solid foundation to that negotiation, right? I mean, why do you think that you're contributing meaningfully to that particular company or that particular firm? And that means not only tangible contributions, but also the intangible ones as well.
The non-billable work.
The non-billable work, right? I mean, how are you managing your team? How are you supervising more junior lawyers? How are you mentoring junior lawyers as well within the firm?
Yes. So Tessa, this is a super hotly debated topic and people feel very strongly about this. Do we need to write a cover letter?
Firstly, if you are being represented by a trusted legal recruiter, definitely not. We will convey the right narrative to any prospective employer. We will make sure that there is a detailed explanation of your motivations and your drivers and what's that part of your experience that is the most relevant for that particular opportunity. Of course, if you have and just decided to go on your own or no one is representing you, you should definitely explain, if it's needed, the reason behind every single move in your journey. But do that in a concise way. Make sure that you're highlighting the right information. It's like doing an executive summary for a due diligence report, right? I mean, focus on the most relevant information, because the most common mistake is doing a very long cover letter full of paragraphs, full of information. And we do get those cover letters every day.
Yes, exactly. In fact, sometimes it might even convey a message that you don't want to convey. So I think having a recruiter really works. But if you don't have a recruiter, ask your friend, your mom, a colleague to really review your CV and see if it's necessary to add a cover email. And if you want to write a cover email, bullet point it. No one has time to read through a long essay. You want the keywords to stand out. So if you're applying for, say, an employment role, make sure employment is front and center. It needs to be right at the top. We can't have to do a keyword search to find it, right? It needs to be in bold. So, what's the best way to set yourself up for a successful first interview?
Do your homework. That means be well prepared for that interview. Second, ask the right questions. The caliber of the questions that you will be asking during a first interview will just set the tone for that first impression. And there's never a second chance for a first impression. And third, be yourself. It could sound like a cliche, but actually just be your true self. Of course, play the best version of yourself. Show your wow factor, but be genuinely yourself.
Yes. And I always tell people, please go for a haircut, tidy those eyebrows. Look the part. I mean, it may sound superficial, but it's really important what you wear. Whether it's a Zoom interview or it's an in-person interview, a firm handshake, you can't go wrong with that. And a smile, So when we say be yourself, we mean the best version of yourself. Put your best foot forward. Because like you said, there's only one chance at making that first good impression.
Yes. And also understand the local nuances of the interviewer, right? I mean, and that also is related to how you need to dress as well, especially in Singapore where we're a little bit more relaxed.
Yes. And I mean, I would also even go as far as to say, whilst you're doing your due diligence on the interviewer, some people can either under-prepare or over-prepare. You kind of want to be in that sweet spot. So I think that's a lot of information and I hope that was useful for everyone. Tessa, tell us more about your journey from Europe to Singapore. So now you've been in Singapore for a good 10 years. And I absolutely want to share this with everyone. I hope you don't mind. But when you first moved here, you actually gained 15 or 16 pounds, 8 kilos. How did you do that?
So I was basically going to the food court every day. My first office in Singapore was at Marina Bay Financial Centre, and I would go typically to the food court there. And until I realized that obviously my body was not used to that type of oil and having carbs every day. So then I stopped after 3 months, and thankfully I was able to lose those 8 kg.
And what did your parents say when they saw you?
They thought, what's happening to you in Singapore?
What were you eating?
So a lot of noodles, fried chicken, fried fish, and basically a different type of food. I wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
My body was not used to it.
I think the local food was just too delicious for
Yes,
you to resist.
too enjoyable.
Right? Yes.
Now I only do food courts during the weekend.
Yeah, okay, very good. So when you first moved here, was it very difficult for you to understand Singlish, Singaporean version of English?
So when I first moved here, I had spent 3 months in Suzhou at my parents' place because they were living in China back then. So when I came here, I was like, oh, I'm so happy actually that people speak Singlish because I can understand everyone.
Ah, okay. So what's your favorite Singlish phrase?
That restaurant was so atas.
Oh, atas.
My favorite word is atas.
How would you explain it to your son? What does atas mean?
High quality.
High quality, nice. I like it. So Tessa, when you moved to Singapore from Spain, what's the biggest challenge you faced?
The biggest challenge that I faced was that it was a double challenge. So I was relocating from Spain to Singapore. I was changing careers. I was also starting to live with my boyfriend, who's now my husband. So there were many changes happening at the same time. But the reality is that the most challenging one was a professional one. So when I transitioned into a different market, I didn't know anything about the Singapore legal market 10 years ago. So I remember my first day at work, I was learning by heart the name of the 4 big local law firms: Allen & Gledhill, Wong Partnership, Rajan Tan, Drew & Napier. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to remember those names by heart, when obviously now is my day-to-day,
It's
basically.
second nature now.
Second nature. So if I could give a piece of advice to someone who's thinking about relocating to Singapore, I would definitely tell them to have a strong willingness to learn new things. Open-mindedness to also new opportunities, new career paths. And third, embrace Singlish, because that would allow you to make new friends. And also for me, really, like, the transition was even easier because of the nature of my work. I have been able to build up very strong relationships with Singaporean lawyers as well.
Yeah. So when you moved to Singapore, you didn't feel there was a divide between the expats and the Singaporeans?
I did feel that during COVID. Yes. So during COVID definitely was a tough period. And that's where we felt that there was a clear division between foreigners and Singaporeans.
How so?
So first of all, in terms of like traveling, right? I mean, we couldn't go back home. There was a point that we couldn't go back home without doing quarantine, but Singaporeans and PRs actually could travel and without any quarantine.
And in the whole 10 years that you and your husband have been in Singapore, have you faced any difficulties in maybe feeling like you were outsiders looking in?
So my husband and I were not real expats in the way that we both work in local companies. We have local contracts. Our children have been born in Singapore and are being raised in Singapore. So we don't feel that we are outsiders. And again, because of my job, and I'm so thankful to it, I have very, very good friends who are Singaporeans, right?
Yes, you have so many. I mean,
Yes.
now I'm seeing them because they were maybe baby lawyers and
Yes,
now they're
and now
like
they're
partners.
partners.
Yeah, head of legal. Okay, so in your time, right, when you moved from Europe to Singapore, you would not only moved countries, you also moved jobs, moved industries. What was the most difficult thing to get used to?
It was very difficult to become a junior recruiter in a way. Like from being a mid-level to senior associate level lawyer to become a new recruiter in a new market, it was tough. But I always, again, looked at the long term, and I thought that that transition was really worth And now 10 years later, I can say that it's been really rewarding and it's been worth the journey.
Can you recall a time where you had doubts and you wondered whether you made the right decision?
Yes, so definitely, of course, we're talking about compensation. Compensation, of course, it can't be number one, but I took a huge pay cut when I moved to Singapore to become a legal recruiter. I wouldn't be able to take that pay cut right now with 3 children.
Yes, Tessa is a mother to 3.
Yes, I mean,
unbelievably.
I wouldn't have that freedom with me now.
Yes, and I that resonates so much with me because when I moved jobs, when I pivoted to legal recruitment, I had no mortgage, I was not married, it doesn't matter.
Right. You're absolutely free, right?
Yes. But what if someone is listening to this and they are married, they have kids, they have a mortgage? What would you say to them if they do want to pivot out of whatever job that they're in?
So first of all, they need to be 100% committed to it. It can't be just, I'll try for a year and see how it works. It's going to be very difficult for that person to go back to their previous role. So my advice will be make up that informed decision, be fully committed, and get the support that you need also from your personal environment to make that move. And that's a question that I ask a lot, lawyers, especially when we speak with senior lawyers who want also to transition into recruitment or they are looking for an alternative career path, is your family supportive of that move?
I think the reason why it's especially difficult for lawyers to pivot out is the very high opportunity cost because it's almost like golden handcuffs, right? They are paid so much, it costs a lot more to make that move, to make that jump. But I would also want to add that it's possible to experiment and maybe side hustle, maybe ask for a sabbatical to try something new. There's this thing called like the mature interns, right? Maybe ask for an internship during your sabbatical before you make that decisive move. Because there are 2 schools of thought here. One is have no fear, just go for it, take the plunge, and you can always come back. But what you just said was, it's very difficult to come back, which is also true because that's what we see when people take an extended career break and they want to come back. It's possible, but more difficult.
Definitely. So yes, follow your dreams, of course, right? I mean, but it's not all about following your dreams only, right? I mean, it needs to be a decision that has been very meditated and where you really want to try something different.
Yeah.
But thinking about what's plan B, what's worst case scenario,
Yes.
what's that best alternative to that negotiated agreement?
Yes.
That best alternative would be to be able to go back to your previous role.
Yes,
so
yes.
make sure that what you're doing is giving substance to being able to go back.
And that's why it's so important to never burn bridges. And I want to tell people, there is no shame in asking for your job back. You could have resigned, you made a mistake, and you go back. I actually know a lot of lawyers who moved jobs to a different place, and after 3 days, they realized it was a big mistake. They went back and they pleaded for their job back and they got it. There's no shame in that.
No, don't ask, don't get.
Yes, don't ask, don't get. That's right. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We'll continue this conversation after this short break. Please don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a thumbs up on YouTube. It will help us make a much bigger impact. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So Tessa, now that we've talked about lawyers, if there's someone from Spain right now, Europe, US, Australia, they're looking to move to Singapore, what are a couple of things they should do before deciding whether Singapore is for them?
First of all, reach out to that trusted legal recruiter like us to give you an overview about the market. How realistic is actually to move for me with my background, with my level of experience to a market like Singapore? Second, be honest with that person who's representing you on the ground, right? I mean, share that whole picture with that trusted legal recruiter. And third, be realistic, have realistic expectations as well, because the market changes, right? I mean, 2021 was a boom year where all the international law firms were hiring. 2024 will be different than 2021 because 2021 was just unprecedented. So your expectations also need to adjust to the current market circumstances.
So Tessa, do you think right now we are going through what we call an employer's market, meaning the employers have the upper hand? Because in 2021, it was a complete employees market. You know, everyone was resigning and everyone was looking desperately to hire. So the employee had the upper hand. Now we're seeing a slight shift, don't you think? Do you think it's an employer's market now?
It is, yes. Yes, it is. It's nothing is going to be similar to 2021.
Never say never. I still hope for the boom times in 2021. But yes, I mean, it's true that now it's more challenging for lawyers, for anyone for that matter, looking for that next opportunity.
And it's also a reality check year. 2021, again, was unprecedented. 2023 has allowed all of us to be more reasonable. And of course, there's a higher scrutiny when hiring a new associate or a new partner, but that's actually a good thing.
So if I'm someone who's looking for a job, what can I do to stand out in a crowded market where it's now the employer has the upper hand?
Reach out to a trusted legal recruiter.
Reach out to Tessa. Yeah.
Reach out to me, I will help you. But jokes apart, definitely connect with someone who's an expert in the local market. That's first thing. Second, have realistic expectations as well. And third, try to work on projects or matters that will make that transition easier. So more cross-border work, more complex work, more international work, get exposure to international colleagues as well. If you're an international law firm overseas, that will definitely help you to make that transition.
And also, well, on that topic, I think it's really important what you just said, because if you're looking to transit into something else, very often we forget that we can totally equip ourselves right now where we are in our current jobs, in our current companies, to get that experience, to make that leap. But very often a lot of people think, oh no, in order to gain that experience, I need to move first, right?
The first question that we ask lawyers who call us from overseas locations looking to come to Singapore is, why not do an internal transfer?
Yes.
That would be plan A, right? I mean, sometimes there are certain hurdles or that they need to overcome that just don't allow them to move internally. But that's always what we encourage everyone to do first.
Yes. And I think a lot of lawyers are very afraid to put their hand up to ask. They worry that if they ask for internal transfer, they will be seen as quitting. But actually that couldn't be further from the truth. They welcome a lot of law firms and global corporate companies. They welcome internal transfers. They would rather keep someone who's talented within the organization.
Totally.
But what do you think is a nice way, or maybe a very safe way of asking and putting your hand up for an internal transfer?
So typically, like, international secondments is a point that is discussed at any performance review at any global international law firm. So those opportunities are really the moment where lawyers should raise their hands, ask for that international secondment, for that international opportunity. And it could be a 6-month secondment or a year secondment. It really depends. But definitely performance reviews are the right time to ask for that.
Okay. And I want to add that I sometimes get asked this question. Maybe it might seem very basic to us, but clearly, you know, if someone's listening in and thinking of asking for internal transfer, whether it's to another department, different country, the first person you should approach is your direct manager. And having that courage to have a direct conversation, that's really important. Having that uncomfortable conversation, but it's so necessary.
Definitely. And depending on the outcome of that conversation, then you will be able to take a decision about looking for other opportunities or not really. Making that internal transfer could be a possibility.
Yes, absolutely. You should look internally before you look externally.
Definitely.
So, Tessa, whilst we're on this topic of career pivots, what is one thing you would say you wish you knew before you made this humongous change?
You need to be humble. And I do use the analogy of Alice in Wonderland, who is big to become and become small to become bigger again. But be humble, be down to earth, And because that's going to really what's going to take to make you successful after any career transition.
And now looking back with the benefit of hindsight, is there anything you would do differently?
Maybe being an international arbitration lawyer.
Really?
Rather than a real estate lawyer.
But then you wouldn't have joined me. We wouldn't be colleagues. Wow, really?
Yes, I think there is definitely a lot to be done with the younger generations in guiding them through the paths that are more suitable in the long run. At the end of the day, when you start law school, you're 18 years old, you're not really sure about what do you want to become, right? In certain cases, except if, of course, if you want to be a doctor. But being a lawyer for me was, I always wanted to be a diplomat. Then my parents actually told me, oh, don't study only politics, also study law. Then I loved actually law. And that's why I went through the legal route. But no one told me, if you really want to be international, you want to have that international career, you should be an international arbitration lawyer.
It's not too late, Tessa.
No, yeah, it's too late, Shirley.
Never say never. Never say never.
But I was very happy being a real estate lawyer, definitely.
Okay, and what made you choose real estate law in the first place?
So real estate was actually a matter of how I really had very strong chemistry with the partners that were the real estate partners back in the day that were leading the department when I was a trainee. And that's actually why I went through the real estate route. And the year I qualified, there were only vacancies for newly qualified lawyers for corporate finance and real estate.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's about the people that you work with.
Yes. Okay, this reminds me, because when I chose my area of specialization, I wanted to be a commercial litigator because I wanted to go to court, do everything that you see people on Ally McBeal and the practice do. But the thing is, my boss was then transferred from litigation to intellectual property. And I thought, oh, better the devil you know. So I moved. But it wasn't a conscious decision. And if I could turn back time, I wish I had applied my mind more intentionally and maybe stayed on in commercial litigation. A little bit like what you're saying now.
Yes. But in any case, I learned so much in those 6 years as a real estate lawyer, technically and also soft skills wise, right?
Yes. Yeah. So no regrets. But with the benefit of hindsight, we can always advise other people, well, this is what we've done.
Yes.
And maybe things would turn out very differently.
Yes, of course.
Yes. So Tessa, looking back on your last 10 years as a legal recruiter, what's a really big failure that set you up for success later on?
So working on my own. There was a point as a legal recruiter that I was working on my own in Singapore. I was the only one in the Singapore office. And before being on my own, I had many friends who were startup founders. They were working on their own. They looked really happy. And I thought, okay, I'll try, right? But it didn't work out well for me. And I realized after that experience that I'm a real team player. And I really enjoy being part of a team, and I wouldn't be able to work on my own.
Yes, I can attest to that. You are definitely a real team player. But tell us more, when you were on your own, what was the biggest struggle?
The biggest struggle was not to have peers around me to, balance ideas, balance thoughts. At the end of the day, the person I was reporting to was based in London, didn't really travel often to Singapore. So it was a real struggle to come back from meetings to the office. It was back in the day when actually we were working in the office every day, right? And yes, I will come back from meetings with clients, candidates, but I didn't have someone to make that, just an emotional support.
Yes, it gets lonely.
In the office, yes.
And you mentioned about your friends who are startup founders and they look very happy. So are they really happy?
They look very happy. No, but it's an entrepreneur mindset.
Yes.
My husband is also an entrepreneur. It's a very different mindset to our mindset. Well, you're an entrepreneur also, actually. But I don't have that mindset with me. And it's fine. You just need to be loyal and just understand what works for you.
Yes.
And I remember back in the day when I was working on my own and it didn't work out well for me because I really wanted to be part of a team. Someone told me, a friend of mine who's a lawyer, told me, oh, Tessa, so actually even recruiters make mistakes. I was like, yeah, but I don't look at it as a mistake. I've learned that I only want to be part of a team from now on.
Yes.
And I would never be an individual contributor anymore.
Yes, yes. And that's so true because if you've not tried it, you wouldn't know that it's not
Of
for you,
course.
right? Yeah. And I actually did that. I was a solopreneur for a while and I thought I was going to really enjoy it, but it gets really lonely and it's actually very difficult to sustain that on a long-term basis. Maybe not very good for our mental health.
No. And also, if you look at the outcomes that you can reach on your own or with a team, of course, with a team, you can achieve higher heights, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yes, it's actually a no-brainer. But unless we've tried it, we wouldn't know.
Yes, of course.
And I think I want to know your mindset when you tried it on your own because you knew it was going to be just on your own. What about you? What was your mindset when you went into that one-woman show outfit in Singapore?
No, I mean, I was very excited during the first 3 months, right? But after the first 3 months, I realized that it wasn't done for me.
Yeah. And you know what, Tessa? I want to say it's really important that you've had all these different experiences. You've worked overseas. I mean, you were from Europe. And then now you're here. You've tried different outfits, local, international.
Yes.
And you now know what suits you. And therefore, you are in a much better position to give people career advice, won't you think?
Yes, of course. Definitely. So that's why I never look back and I don't have regrets, right? I mean, because I have learnt lessons from all of those experiences that I have had in the past.
So, Tessa, let's segue into your pro bono work because you and your husband are big proponents of educational projects in Cambodia, right? And if Juan is listening to this, shout out to him. Yeah.
No, definitely. Credits to Juan, basically.
Yes.
But my husband lived in Cambodia during 2 years. So Cambodia has always been part of our lives as a family as well.
Wow.
So we do support different social projects in North Cambodia, basically close to Battambang. But there is a strong focus on making sure that children in remote villages are able to have access to primary education. So we're supporting now around 20 schools that allow 4,000 students to get access to primary education in rural Cambodia.
Amazing. And what started all of that?
That was just before COVID. Then Juan founded his NGO, which is called Batampur from Battambang and Singapore, to
nice.
basically be able to raise funds from Singapore to support schools in rural Cambodia.
Yeah. And does this have to do with the fact that you and Juan went to visit landmine victims many years ago?
So everything started because of Juan living in Cambodia between 2008 to 2010. And then he went back to Madrid, but Cambodia is part of his life and therefore part of our family's life. So one of the privileges that we have from living in Singapore is that we can travel often to Cambodia. And Juan travels very often. For us as a family, we'll go twice a year. So we just were there for Christmas, for example. We spent 2 weeks there. It's just part of our life purpose.
What's your life purpose?
So our life purpose is, because it's a common life purpose that we have, it's raising a happy family. But apart from that, is definitely giving back to the community. And, we had amazing opportunities, educational opportunities. We feel very lucky, but we also want to make sure that people that are born in different circumstances and environments are also able to get access to primary education.
Wow, I really admire that. And speaking about your children, you have 3 children. How do you manage everything? You have a busy career, you give back, you go to Cambodia, and Juan has all his entrepreneurial pursuits. How do you manage it all?
So we are a team. Because without teamwork, it's just not possible, right?
Yes.
I mean, so we are a team, my husband, my helper, and myself, and it's teamwork. And of course, my parents, that even if they're not physically here in Singapore, they are huge emotional support as well.
So last question, Tessa, and this related to your family. Imagine your son is all grown up now and he's listening to this. What advice would you give him?
So do whatever you want, but do it well and enjoy it. and be kind and persevere.
Well said. And so, Tessa, before we wrap up, we have the rapid fire round of questions. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
What are your top 3 favorite Spanish restaurants?
Esquina, Binomio, and Culto.
Oh, I love all of them. And what's your favorite drink?
A cold beer with my husband.
Oh, nice. And how do you unwind after a long day?
Reading a book to my children.
What book are you reading now?
So right now I'm reading The Horse, the Mole, and the Fox.
Oh, I love that
Yes.
book. Yeah, that's really good. And what's your motto in life?
My motto in life is be kind.
What's your favorite Singlish phrase? Which I asked already, so give me a second one. You don't have?
Atas. Atas is number 1 for me. I love it. Just because there's no direct translation into English.
Other than atas, what's another phrase that you like?
Can
Singlish
can. Can la.
Oh, can lah.
Can la. That's also a phrase that I repeat a lot at work.
I love it.
Can la.
I love it. Oh my God. Can lah.
Can la.
How about your favorite Singaporean dish?
Laksa.
Oh, yum. And your next holiday destination?
Scotland.
I'm still laughing. Okay. What do you think of when you hear the word bar?
Law.
Okay, really nice. Thank you for your time, Tessa,
Thank
for
you,
being a
Shirley.
guest on After the Bar. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
This was fun. So if you've enjoyed this episode, then be generous and share it with all of your friends, your family, your colleagues, and follow us on LinkedIn. Follow Tessa on LinkedIn and follow me on LinkedIn. And we'll catch you the next time on After the Bar. See you.
Bye.
Thank you, Tessa, for sharing your experience with us today. To all our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Do drop your comments below if you're listening to this on YouTube and hit that subscribe and thumbs up button. If you're on Spotify, hit that follow button and give us a 5-star rating. Don't hesitate to share this episode with your friends so they can join us as well. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of After the Bar.